Hello, and welcome to the Evening Tea. On this episode, Dotson and I discuss his close friendship with Ruth Carter Stapleton, Jimmy Carter's youngest sister, as well as the Carter family more broadly. The interview was recorded in December of 2022, and it was my intention to release it shortly after completing the podcast's Kennedy series. With former President Carter now in hospice, and with many reflecting on his legacy, I have decided to release it now. One thing to note. Not all of Dotson's recollections of the former president are entirely flattering, and it is not my intention to publish the interview as a critique of a man on his deathbed. Rather, my purpose is simply to tell true and interesting stories of this family as truthfully recounted by someone who knew them well, and which we might not otherwise hear. After recording this interview, I read the memoirs of Buddy Carter, Jimmy Carter's nephew, and much that Dotson recounted checked out. So, with that said, I hope you find the next half hour interesting and enlightening.
That is really intimidating.
I know, I love it. And the sound quality is great.
Looks like a dildo.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It looks like something you put on the floor and you sit on.
Yeah, well, it could probably do that too, and it'll pick up some interesting sounds, I'm sure.
Well, let's see, what should I do? Should I have I'll have a Coke. I'm really pissed that you ate dinner already. I even took a shower.
Oh my goodness.
What do you want to talk about today?
So I've been, I don't think you've ever told me about your love affair with Ruth Stapleton.
I would not call it a love affair. She was, I adored her. You would have adored her. You absolutely adored her. And I met her by doing I first met her at the Democratic Convention here. Mm-hmm. And so I sat...
Like 72 or something? 76?
It was 1980.
1980.
I think it was 80. It was when Teddy ran. So one night I would sit at the Kennedy box when he was speaking, and then when Jimmy got the nomination, then I sat in the Carter box because I knew both families. Could be a trifle awkward at times. And so I had to have met her before then. So when did I meet her? I can't remember when it was, but it was before. It was before that convention because we had become such close friends by then. And I met her brother before I met her. The president, one of the most disagreeable people I've ever met in my entire life.
Why is that?
Well, first of all, he was. Is he still alive? Oh, he is? Yeah. Well, the good die young, darling. He's the cheapest person I know. I'll tell you one story about him. He is. He's one. I know two really cheap people, but he is up there at an almost historic level.
Well, he should be if he's going to be.
And I remember I became friends with Miss Lillian, who was fabulous.
Who was that?
His mother, Jimmy Carter's mother, Lillian Carter, Miss Lillian. She was absolutely fabulous, and she met Tennessee. She got on with Tennessee. She got on with everybody. She and her sister, who was known as Aunt Sissy. So Miss Lillian and Aunt Sissy, became great friends. And but I guess it was 1980. What was the question? How I met him? What was the question? No.
Yeah, I mean it was just. Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
I met him through.
You were telling me the story of that was going to demonstrate how cheap he was.
Oh yeah. So I went down to Plains, Georgia, to see Miss Lillian because we'd become great friends. And I was out in L.A., so I thought, well, I'll stop and you fly to Americas and see Miss Lillian, spend a couple of days with her because she's fun. And Jimmy Carter's sister, Gloria, who was gay, it was great fun. And she had a motorcycle, it was in leather. I mean, just the whole family was such a parody of Southern eccentricity. Just amazing. And Billy was great fun, loved to drink. But I miss them all. They were Anyway, so I was at. So what was the question again?
You're gonna
I
tell
gotta
a story
stop.
that demonstrated how cheap he was.
I had to stop drinking. So anyway, I went down to Plains to see Miss Lillian. She invited me down, and while I was down there, she said that she'd been called by the police. She'd been in Miami and gone down with her sister to Key West. That's on a holiday, and while she was down there, she went by Tennessee Williams' house, and although Tennessee wasn't there, and knocked on the door, and Frank Fontes, who was a Tennessee was a friend of Tennessee's, but he watched the house and he was in the house. There was a gay party going on. He wasn't supposed to be living in the house. He was just a caretaker. But when Tennessee would leave, he suddenly would move lock, stock, and and so she told me about she'd been down there. She'd been at Tennessee's house, and that the police had called her about 2 weeks later because Frank Fontes, who was in the house, the caretaker who was supposed to had been murdered. And so they wanted to know what she knew about it. So anyway, I'm down there, and so before I leave, I've done like 3 to 4 days. And before I leave, this was, it must have been, it was shortly after, it was like a year after he got voted out of the White House. And his house in Plains, they were building this enormous, very elaborate, beautiful cast iron fence around his entire property. And I thought that was absolutely astonishing because there is no crime in Plains, Georgia. I mean, it's like 3 houses. But this big and elaborate, it's like a fence it was like the fence around Gramercy Park, just.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'm down there and we go out to dinner, and it's like in Americus, it's sort of like a souped up diner. And the entrees are like $2. So it's Miss Lillian, it's me, it's Rosalind and Jimmy and Amy. Remember the little daughter who always kept looking down at people's heels, and poor thing. And the bill comes.
For the fence?
Hmm?
For the fence?
No, I'm with the diner.
The diner.
So I'm leaving the next day, so I say, let me take everybody out to dinner. I mean, I thought, well, it cost me $16 tops. So it's me, Miss Lillian, Jimmy, Rosalind, Amy, for dinner. And the bill is $400 and some, like $428, something like that. And they didn't take credit cards. We're in Americus, Georgia here. So it's very, very, I had like $200 in cash on me. And I said to Miss Lillian, can you step outside with me for a minute? So she went outside and I had the bill. And I said, I don't have they don't take credit cards. I said, I don't have that much cash on me. I have like $200. She said, let me see the bill. And she looked at the bill. Oh, she said, damn it, he's done it again. I said, what are you talking about? Well, that bill, I mean, we think it should be like $16. That's what he's done, baby, is he has put the cost of a carton of wine on your bill. He does this all the time when someone's paying for dinner. The wine goes, I said, what's the, she said, well, the wine goes to his office. His office is in Atlanta. I said, really?
Really?
Yeah, really. So I thought, this guy's the cheapest.
Well, it's not even, I mean, it's not even that he's cheap, it's that he's like
Clever.
shaking people down.
Well, it is a form of cheating, but you're there.
I mean, if he's like, cheap is that you get dinner together and he always makes you pay the bill. That's cheap. Buying a case of wine without you knowing, I mean, that's something else. on your And putting on your bill, I mean,
Yeah.
that's something else.
Yeah, it's swindle. It's probably thievery, come to think. But I mean, I was in a position I couldn't say anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and also,
So how did you pay the bill?
we're sitting at one table, and directly across from us is a table of 4 Secret Service men,
Yeah.
literally, sitting there. They're not even eating, they're just sitting
Yeah.
there. And it's amazing because he gets in his little car, putt-putt drives, and behind him is a car, following him is a car full of Secret Service agents. And I never understood this. There are 3 houses in this town. What are they protecting him from? Probably hostile voters, but I mean, that's what I thought to myself. This guy's the cheapest.
So, but anyway, back to Ruth. So you tell me more about your relationship with her.
Ruth Stapleton.
Mm-hmm.
She became great. We became friends. I can't remember where we met. And then she and I and Pat Lawford. I was very close to Pat. Pat was one of my 2 or 3 best friends in the world. And then Ruth Stapleton became a close friend. In fact, the last person she called when she was dying was me in Princeton. It's heartbreaking when I think about it. But so we sort of became the threesome. I don't mean sexually, but we did a lot of things, the 3 of us together. Mm-hmm. So she'd come to New York, and we'd go out to lunch together or to dinner together, and we went to, the 3 of us went to Las Vegas together and went to LA together. We did a lot of things together just because we had a lot of fun together. And also because Ruth, being a preacher, if she was going to have fun, like in Vegas or whatever, she had to be around people she could trust who would not be telling the press about what she might be doing. And so she trusted that we would hold confidence as confidential. I mean, it's one of the tough things about being a celebrity is the betrayal of people you think are your friends. But the worst betrayal you can do with a celebrity is tell the world what he doesn't want the world to know. But anyway, so that's it. But I think the high point was in terms of their public lives, was when Teddy spoke, sitting with the Kennedy box, and when Jimmy accepted the nomination, sitting with the Carters. That was sort of, I thought I played that very diplomatically.
Did anyone notice?
They all noticed. But the thing is that when there was nobody in it except for, I think, Chip, and there was nobody in the Carter box when Teddy spoke. They just simply didn't show up. And no, it's true. And the same was true in the Kennedy box when.
And what was, I mean, so you were talking to both, you knew both sides very well as they were running against one another.
Yeah.
So what were they saying about each other? What were they, what were they saying about each other as what were you privy to?
Well, no, I just think it's funny because this is literally true. Pat and Ruth and I, as I said, were together a lot.
By that point, you were.
Yeah, and at one point, when both brothers were running for the same nomination, Ruth and Pat Lawford seriously discussed both of them campaigning together. The 2 of them would campaign for Jimmy, and the next day the 2 of them would campaign for Teddy. I'm serious. I mean, there's a funny thing about people that have been in politics a long time, is they realize the game, and to a very large extent, is already fixed. And that's particularly true in nominations. I mean, there's a big public drama created to make sure people actually believe there is a real contest going on here. But there's really a contest. It's before the fix is in, before the first delegate shows up. I'm being serious.
I mean, the incumbent, and presumably the incumbent is the one that people are going to support.
Yeah, but even when it seems as if no one has a real majority, and it might be it's not a real contest, because if Basically, I think it's basically, you would know, but my feeling of having been around it is basically determined by the money people.
Because he was governor?
Yeah, he was governor, and I guess the devil, I don't know why, and he beat Teddy for the nomination, which is, I mean, it was close, but he shouldn't have. You know, I think the party wanted to, you know, a fresh start. And so they, you know, elected a hayseed.
He was like the anti-Kennedy consensus?
Yeah, I mean, he, you know, good, mildly conservative, reasonable Southern gentleman, farmer. And the party was, and the truth be, the party was worried about Nixon had taken the South, and they were worried, which was traditionally the absolute bastion of Democratic voters was in the South, the old Nixie. And Nixon had taken it away from them. And I think they thought Jimmy Carter would give it, well, he didn't, but would give it back to them.
I mean, I don't think it's, I don't know, I don't know it that well, but I don't think it's like that. I don't think there's like a group of people who decide. I think things break a certain way. I mean, there's definitely like Joe Biden was a very good example of kind of the consensus candidate. He was Hillary Clinton was the consensus candidate in 2016.
Right.
You know, that consensus, I mean, she was forming that consensus for many years, right? She was supposed to be the consensus candidate in 2008, but there wasn't a consensus. I mean, what happened in 2008, that's an interesting thing, right? She was supposed to be the nominee, and Barack Obama became the nominee in large part because of Ted Kennedy. Because he broke for Barack Obama, and I think part of the, I don't know if it's true or not, but part of the myths of the 2008 election was that was a big moment when he and Carolyn, I think, came out in support of Barack Obama. That really gave him a lot of momentum and whatever.
But I think I'm telling you this, but when it was clear Ted wasn't going to get the nomination, and was at the hiatus, and you know, and I sat outside with him at his mother's house, Rose's house, just the two of us. We were drinking, and he was. I just said to him, I was just making conversation. I said, "What would you do if you'd won the presidency?" He just lost the nomination. If you'd gone and won what is it you seriously would really do? He went on this. He must have talked for 20, 25, 30 minutes, like he was giving a speech, talking about how, and basically he saw the economy as wrong and unjust, and that you couldn't fix anything until you fixed the economy, and that in time the sheer imbalance in terms of wealth in the country would destroy the country, because it would destroy people's belief in democracy. In other words, they'd know the fix was in. And I just, I just sat there listening to him, and I thought, Jesus God, what a great president he would have made. And what kept it from it was that Chappaquiddick. Hadn't been for that, And actually, he didn't. The truth is, he didn't know she was in the car. Remember the car? He was in a car. He'd been to a party, was drinking. I forget the name of the girl. Got in his back seat of his car. And he got his car and sped and went over the bridge at Chappaquiddick rather than, and then, opened his door and swam out. And people said, "Oh, he committed murder." He didn't know she was in the car.
She was just hiding in his car?
Yeah, but she'd been. It was like it was like he was going to his car. She was hiding in his car, but she'd been there a while, and apparently had fallen asleep in the back, and he didn't know she was in there. And so he drunk and he steps on the gas and goes over the bridge. But it's what destroyed his political career. What?
No.
So what's the question?
Well, I guess I was asking what it was like to know both of them as they were running against each other. But it sounds like at least the people around them were on rather friendly terms. So at least the people you knew, that there wasn't.
I don't think there's a lot, as a general rule in politics in America. I'm talking about people who've been in political life a long time. Although publicly there seems to be a great deal of animosity.
They all know each other for a long time.
Yeah, but there's very little personal.
Yeah.
because everybody knows.
They're all working, they're all making money.
They're all winking at each other.
Yeah.
And it's a racket.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just.
That's my opinion. I mean,
it is a racket, and it's also just what it is. I mean, that's just what it's not like. It's just what it's not like anyone is trying to make it that way or something. It's just the way.
It's just the way democracy works.
Yeah.
And if you have a democracy where you have a very wealthy ruling class, which we do, and England does, it's the fix is always in.
Yeah. And everybody knows each other, and everybody, knows that, everybody wants to maintain good relationships with each other because they, the smart ones know that their paths will cross many times in the future, and, you don't want to make, enemies when that's something that's going to happen, right? You don't want to make, if you know that, probably, this is your life, probably, you're going to be doing this for years. These are the other people who are going to be probably doing this for years. You don't want to be making enemies left. I mean, some people do. Some people like that. But most people...
No, but I think part of it, too, is they all, with very few exceptions, they come out of... I mean, Jimmy Carter, was a rich man. Owned a lot of land. He cheated his brother Billy out of Billy's land. I mean, he was a...
So what's the story? Guys, I don't know any of that.
This is what Ruth told me. She... I get really angry when I think about him. The way he treated Ruth, the way he treated his mother, the way he treated his brother. Billy was supposed to get the farm.
And was it a peanut farm or something?
Mm-hmm. And through valuable land, a lot of land. and I can't remember the details, but I do remember Ruth being really upset about it because it turned out, because I asked her once, why does Billy drink so much? She said, because of his damn brother, that's why I drink so much. And then she told me about he'd been cheated out of his inheritance, out of the land. The idea being that Jimmy was going to go off to the Navy and wasn't going to be farming. That was before he wanted to be, anyone knew he wanted to be president, but he was going to have a different life. He wasn't going to be some farm boy down in Albany, Georgia, or Americus, Georgia. And so Billy was to get the land. And I can't remember the details of it, but one way or another, Jimmy got title to the land, although he didn't work it. I remember when Ruth died, terrible. I loved her so much, and I was the last person she talked to. I made a phone call to her, and she was dying. She literally died.
What did she die from?
Later that cancer. They all died of cancer in that time. And but Miss Lillian was at the hospital and was rather delicate, her condition. And Jimmy was told, as the eldest, that it was up to him to call her, because he would know when Ruth died, and to call his mother, because they didn't want the shock of Ruth, her daughter, dying to be on her television set in the hospital room. And of course, Jimmy didn't get around to it. He had other things to do. And she heard on the break, the big news down in Georgia, and they broke into the programming to announce that Ruth had died. And Miss Lillian let out a shriek, and she just she didn't know anything, just completely, he was supposed to go to the hospital, supposed to talk to her, and break it to her easily, and stay with her so she wasn't alone in a room, and she died 2 weeks later, and I blame him for that.
What did Ruth talk to you about in that last phone call?
Oh, she was very weak. She called me, and this tiny little voice, and she said, "I love you so much, and I'm so sorry. I have to leave, but it's time to go." And she said, I can't remember the exact words, but she said something like, "When the angel comes to get you, you have no choice." It was very sweet. She didn't seem upset or sorrowful, or very weak, that little teeny voice, but she seemed resigned to it. I mean, there's nothing dramatic about it, but I was very touched that she would call me. I was in Princeton then, and she was a wonderful woman.
And I mean, tell me what she was like. You said she was a preacher, but she likes to go to Las Vegas and party.
Oh no, she was just fun. Mm-hmm. She was very, very playful and funny. I mean, Pat and I, and Ruth, the three of us had a hell of a lot of fun. I remember I'll just give you an example. She was very open to experience. You know, she's a little girl from Georgia. She had a very conservative husband, a very conservative family. I'll tell you a story. The family, I'll get back to her in a minute, because I'll never forget it. I'm down there, and you had to fly into Americas, as I said, and I didn't drive. So Chip, Jimmy's son, offered to drive me to the airport. And on the way to the airport, we stopped for lunch at some diner. And they all know Chip, and he's just the local celebrity, the president's son. And he goes in, and there's this little waitress comes over, and he says, "How you doing today, honey?" And she says, "Oh, I'm fine, Mr. Carter. How are you?" "Oh, couldn't be better. Oh, this is my friend here. This is my friend Dotson. He's a hotshot writer from New York City." Oh, she's just kind of, I don't know, she's just completely sort of self-conscious, doesn't know how she's supposed to respond. And he says to her, "You ever been to New York City?" And she said, No, I haven't." "You better stay away from it." He said, this boy is from New York City. You know what he does in New York City? He sucks black dick. That's what he does. He sucks black cocks. That's what he does. Black cocks in New York City. That's what this man does. And this poor waitress was, the blood left her face. She was like trembling. Oh, God help us. But he thought it was funny. You know, I didn't think it was funny at all. Not because it was me. I just didn't thought that was mean. He was showing off. Anyway. See, you're no good after a drink.
No, you were talking about what she was like, and you were gonna tell a story of what she was like. You said she had a conservative husband.
Oh no, I want to tell you a story about Jimmy, because after Ruth died, Joan Kingsley and I went down to, I was really, really, really upset. And I went down to, I think it was I kept trying to remember the name of where the funeral was. And so I went down with Joan Kingsley. I didn't want to be alone, so we both flew down to Georgia, and we went to the funeral, and then we went to the burial after the funeral, and it's really, and the preacher committing the coffin, sang a prayer. We're all standing around, they lower the, we don't watch it lower, it's above the hole and above the grave. And so you have a committal prayer. And he's saying, I'm going to paraphrase up here, "And then, dear Holy Father, bless our sister Ruth. And we know she is in your sheltering arms as we pray to you. And do forgive her, Lord, for any of her sins, including the fact she hung around a lot of perverts in her," Lily looked at me, "a lot of perverts and sinful people. Although, Holy Father, you read her heart, and we know she did that in order to win them over to you." I couldn't fucking believe it. Isn't that the grave? Joan and I are standing there, and she looks at me, and she does this. And then after, we went out to the cabin. Ruth had a cabin where she, it was her getaway place with the porch, and it was nice. And Jimmy Carter and Rosa are there. I'm there first. It's like, must be, 50 people, 60 people. And everybody's drinking the beer, and, it's like it's normally at a wake. I mean, it wasn't a wake, but, and Jimmy Carter comes in, with his big car with the secret service. And Rosalind comes in, and she gets crying. I mean, that was her best friend, was Ruth Stapleton. And she comes over and she throws her arms around me. And I hug her and I say, "It's okay, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. She's well now. She's not sick anymore. She's with Jesus now." And I felt really, and Jimmy was working the room. Meet and greet. And so they stayed maybe 20 minutes. And as I said, there were beers, food and stuff, as you normally would have. Outside was what do you call it? Looks like a big, what do you call it? Like a big chest. And
A cooler?
big cooler, yeah, with ice and cans of beer. And we say goodbye, and we watch them get in the car with the Secret Service following them. And I'm standing out on the porch, and the car stops. They're going maybe 30 feet, and the car suddenly stops, and the Secret Service car stops. They don't turn around, they start backing up. And then they stop by the house, and Jimmy Carter gets out of the back seat of his limo and goes up to the porch, opens the cooler, and takes two 6-packs of beer like this. And I look and I went, and he just, Dotson, it's free, it's free. And goes back in his limo. You asked how do I know he was cheap? It's free, Dotson. It's free.
It's funny because his reputation is so different. But I guess that's the point.
He's a.
Because he has that Habitat for Humanity. He's always building houses.
No, yeah. Right. Sure is. So was Brad Pitt. Jimmy is a very petty man. I don't mind. I don't mind great figures, presidents, or leaders of nations when they commit great cruelties, because they're usually, from their point of view, and the state they control, there's usually a reason for it. But when these same people do petty cruelties, for which there's no reason beyond the satisfaction that they can hurt someone and get away with it, you can't speak back to them. And that's what about Jimmy Carter, because I thought.
What were some examples of that?
I thought he was such a fucking hypocrite.
What were some of his?
Well, I mean, to me, the chief one I mentioned was not calling his mother. He had more important things to do. I mean, I never talked to him about it, but there's something. Some of the Secret Service people complained to me. I mean, I was there a little while, that he was having them do stuff that wasn't part of their job description.
Such as what?
Huh?
Such as what?
Well, I mean, like, it wasn't their job to get his car washed. It wasn't their job. You know what I mean? It just, he treated them like unpaid staff. Mm-hmm. And they're.
I mean, I imagine in reality they all have to do things like that.
No, that's not true.
No?
Mm-mm.
Just the ones who want it.
No, it's not. Just isn't true. I mean, they're highly trained police officers, and the mayor's not going to. Well, he wouldn't be mayor anymore if he got out. If he had used police officers to run to the store to get his groceries, which is the kind of thing Jimmy would do, because that's humiliating to them.
Yeah.
But anyway, poor man.
You said, I think you told Hillary Clinton that he ruined that family with his ambition.
Who said that?
I think you said that to Hillary Clinton.
Yes. I have it on tape, I think.
Yeah.
Did you use it?
Yeah.
Because I can't remember.
I posted it. What did you mean by that? That his ambition ruined his family, or destroyed his family?
Because I think trying to think what I did mean by that. I think it's the same with it, that.
And you said Joe Kennedy, the same thing.
Well, I think to take anybody, it's very common for the family. Someone pays for your success. If you have great public success, someone in the family's going to pay for that. Because if it's, I don't know whether it's almost like a moral law of the universe.
Yeah.
Everything comes at a price. And people who become very rich, or rich and famous, or others who sacrifice everything for their own ambition, it's usually people near them who pay for their ambition. the children. Just look at the Kennedys. I mean, they end up on drugs, or they end up alcoholics, or the ambition is so overwhelming that it destroys the balance in the lives of the people around them. It's a terrible thing to be, and I mean that seriously, it is a terrible thing to be 9 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, and you're being watched by everybody. There's nothing you do that it's one way or another doesn't find its way in the press. And that was particularly true of the Kennedy family, because the press had an almost lurid, I would say almost scatological interest in that family, in every member of that family. And, I blame having been a part of the press, I mean, I have a certain right, I think, to put the blame where it belongs. I don't think that little Bobby would have had his drug problems, and Chris Lawford had his, and Max wouldn't have died, and all the rest, if they hadn't been under this intense public pressure. It's one thing to have to act good around your parents. It's another thing to have to act good around everybody. You can't be young. You can't. You have no forgiveness for bad behavior. All teenagers do bad things because they're trying to find their limits. They're trying to find out who they are, and the only way you do that is to challenge the rules. And they do that all the time, and it's healthy. But if every time you challenge the rules, it gets to the New York Post, and you're 14 years old, it kills you. So anyway, are we going to eat?